I have an idea. Let us paint the Muscle Warrior. Welcome back again, Chromatic Warriors. This time around we're having a look at the Darkoath Savagers. Recently the starter box was sent to me. Thank you, Games Workshop. And I painted up the Horse Lord quickly before my trip to Denmark, but I could not resist the call of the stallion. In the past, I've already painted some Darkoath Savagers from the game Red Harvest, one of the Warcry supplements. I really enjoyed their Sumerian aesthetics, and at that time I was trying to do a quicker recipe of these models, so it's always fun to have your kind of fast tabletop version as well as the more detailed, character-focused paint job. So yeah, I had fun painting them up, and I hope you enjoy this as well. Let's get into it. There they are. In the beginning. First of all, I need to lay down some base coats, starting with the rubble down below, deep gray. Next up, I'll be painting the skin. I'm taking a Brigadine brown and Great Hall gray, combining them together. It's making my deep flesh tone. And then a little touch of night sky to produce a colder tone for the recesses. And I'll just spread that all over his muscled chest and throbbing thighs. Alright, next up let's take care of the rags. I'll be laying down a few coats of Demigod Flames. Throwing yellow over black is going to be a bit of a struggle, so just be patient. Thin that paint down appropriately. See on the back it's dried. Stacks up nicely. On most of the leathers I'll be base coating with a mixture of black and Gargoyle gray. See, I'm just picking out the straps, the boots, all the little leather details. On the furs, and also the, we'll call them buckskin patches across the shins, I've got a 50-50 mixture of Molten lava and Brigadine brown. Gives me a nice terracotta tone. Now any skulls or severed heads, I'm just going to start right away with the wet blending. First laying down some Prarie ochre, then some deep ocean blue, bringing them together. And consider, instead of the Prarie ochre, swapping it out for a different kind of decayed color. There's a lot of different greens or dead blues to choose from, but I'm just going to go with this combination for the video. Moving along to the metal, I'll be using gunmetal to base coat all of the silver areas, all of the buckles, the big old axe that you can see. And if I'm feeling spicy, I'll pull some weapon bronze into play. There are various totems, or perhaps you want to break up the buckles a little bit, but just bringing a yellow metal into play. Final touch of base coating, I'm going to lay down some Great Hall gray on that lovely lock. Now it's time to start dissecting all these base coats. Going back to the beginning, working from the inside out, I'll be targeting the skin. Just recreated that original base coat mixture, and then I'm wet blending it up with some Great Hall gray. There's a touch of night sky mixed into that as well, giving me a cold gray skin tone as I build up. But I'll be wet blending my way through that, as you can see. It doesn't have to be very precise. I'm just concentrating on the larger volumes. Here and there I'll go and take from whichever ingredient I feel is missing and just add a little bit more brightness, kind of bringing out the front of the chest, any of the protruding areas. The wet blending, at least on the skin, complete. Just going back in with that brightest tone that I was using, just applying a pure mixture of night sky and Great Hall gray. See, I'm just kind of rounding out the volumes. There's a lot of smooth muscle to be capitalizing on. He's also slightly turned to the side, you know, he has an open pose, and he's opening up to his left. So I want to be directing the light in that way. That's why, you know, right on the top of the thigh muscle, kind of got this wider cylindrical highlight going on. And that's also what's going to be guiding me as I'm painting on the chest and abdomen. You can see where I'm pulling the highlights to face that same direction. So I'll be continuing to work that up like so. Be kind of somewhat quick about it. I plan on spraying a shadow on from the depths, but as I gradually am highlighting, I'm also bringing a small amount of Barren Dune into play. Gives me just a little bit of a warmer color in the highlight areas, so I've got this kind of cold to warm progression going on. Granted that it's very subtle, but originally I had that blue mixed into the shadow, and now in the form of Barren Dune, I've got kind of a slight amount of ivory yellow coming into the brightest of peaks. Alrighty, not too bad getting things established. I've gone back to that original base coat mixture, and I've combined a little bit of dragon red into that concoction. And as you can see, I'm just adding a little bit of a fleshy underhue to the skin. That's what we'll call it. I want to make him look a little enraged and, flushed and reddened in certain areas. Makes him look a little more alive. And yeah, it's a fun combination in contrast to the kind of general dead gray skin going on. Put a little in the center of his chest. Yeah, just hitting the temples. Real thin glaze. Any of the action points. The elbows, tips of the fingers, crooks of the elbows, a little on the knee. You get the picture. And to finish off the skin for now, a small touch of Barren Dune to finally cap it off. Creates a very unique, very reminiscent of Frazetta kind of skin tone. It's a fun combination. I'll just gradually stack that up, going from cold to warm, just ending things with a very small, sharp highlight. Very nice. Alright, the skin is looking mighty fine. Let's go in and work on these rags. So it started off with a base coat of Demigod Flames. I'll be taking that same color, and this time bringing in some Demonic Yellow. Just wet blending that in for my highlight. And yeah, just paying attention to the larger planes. I don't need to get too fixated on the tiny details just yet. Let's make sure I go somewhat broad with this first pass. But yeah, I'll just get everything staged up. Just a combination of those two colors will be enough for me. To raise those rags up, I've added just a little bit of pale sand. I'll be combining that with the Demonic Yellow wherever it's appropriate. Just the general nature of when I'm painting like this to a higher level, I tend to do gradual mixtures to get me up to the pure tone. So small amounts of Demonic Yellow combined with pale sand and just gradually highlighting up until I've gotten that down to a pure pale sand, which I should be able to do that in 2 coats. Just a mix and then the pure take. And there might be some areas like right here. I'll take the pure Demonic Yellow, just controlling the volume a little bit as we go downwards. Don't want that to be the same brightness as the area up around his waist, for example. Moving right along, I'll take care of the leathers. I have black combined with Gargoyle gray. You can see this first highlight that I'm adding in is a little bit more broad. You can kind of see it over on the model's bracer. So go a little large, a little more general with this first pass. And then, once that's complete, I'll go in with pure Gargoyle gray and just keep that to the edges, the slimmest of margins, for a bright highlight. So I'll just be laying in some varying grays, nice and sharp, but I like this Gargoyle gray because it trends a little bit on the warmer side. It's a little sun-bleached. I get a little more of a unique gray tone out of it. Looking good, looking good. This is the part of the video where I become confident in the direction of my process and give myself a pat on the back with some complimentary observations I'm just alone here telling myself it looks good. Oh, hey, I'm working on the leather, the buckskin patches on his shins, pulling out the furs, and just like before I had Brigadine brown mixed with molten lava, I've added a little bit more molten lava into the mix. And from there, I'll bring a little bit of, you guessed it, Barren Dune, another house favorite. But I'll mix that in and just produce smaller highlight portions, pull a little bit of texture on the front of the shin. Just generally sharpening the blade. But yeah, it's just important to note a little textured approach on these buckskin shins. Let's take care of that skull. Got some Prarie ochre, a little bit of water on the brush. It's going to cake sort of a textured progression real quickly in place. And I'll add a little bit of Barren Dune into that, just brightening and texturing even further. And from there, bringing some pale sand into play, just applying it very sparingly, trying to pick out the kind of major edges. Get this bright upward-facing circular area on the skull. You can see that textured approach looks really nice for a bone area. Some don't care about the hair, but I don't think that's fair. Hair is very important to me. Length is strength, after all. A long braid symbolizes deep thoughts. So I'll be taking my terracotta mixture, that Brigadine brown and molten lava, combining that with Gargoyle gray. That'll produce my first shadow. And then let's jump in with some pale sand. I want the hair to read as a near white. I want it to be very, very bright, so I'm hesitant to add too much in the direction of shadow. And I think it contrasts nicely with the darker areas on the rest of the model. And finally, just small peaks of white. Try to accent this sort of main bend in the braid right before it curves downward. All these base coats will be covered after this stage. You can see I just have a little bit of black. I've been slowly layering it up on the metallic areas, just controlling where the shine is happening, where the light is bouncing off the reflective chunks within the paint. I like to control it a little bit, but just knocking in some quick shadows, really. This will give the washes something to grab onto. Doesn't have to be very clean, because I still have more layers to be treated. But yeah, just taking a little bit of black and slowly shading down the metals. Alright, base coat's applied. Let's have a little fun. Time for that anti-zenithal shadow application. So just 2 parts black, 2 parts Magnolia brown, and 1 drop of airbrush medium. And we'll gently be spraying up from the depths, adding a unifying shadow. Just be real gradual with it. Just gentle little pats of paint. It's going to be deceptive. The shadow will accumulate very slowly. Be able to see it nicely on this yellow loincloth. Yeah, see, it just comes in very softly. Yeah, just slowly spin him around, adding this in many thin layers. Okay, now after applying the unifying shadow, it's time to further unify. First, I'm glazing on some speed paints. I've diluted down some warrior flesh, about 10 to 1. It was a pretty thin amount of the speed paint, large amount of the speed paint medium, but you can see how it's adding some life, some reddened fleshy tone. Works well on the hair. I mean, any other appropriate areas. Feel free to just throw this warm wash around as you please. Following that, some Grim Black, but I haven't diluted this down as far. It's just 50-50 Grim Black and 50-50 Speed Paint Medium, hitting all the leathers, hitting the metallics as well. Oh, so fine. And finally, everything that hasn't had a touch already is going to get a layer of Desolate Brown. This is on the much thinner side. Once again, it's about 8 parts Speed Paint Medium, 2 parts Desolate Brown. Your category of success is pretty wide on diluting the Speed Paints, but just a little glazing of Desolate Brown to cap everything off. The Great Muscle Warrior nearly brought to life. Just had those final highlights to attend to, going in here with some Barren Dune, picking out certain areas on the skin. See these, these progressions are already in place. I laid down a wash. Now I'm just kind of pulling things back out from that very thin filter. And in some areas, I think I'll jump up to pale sand and just gradually making things brighter as I go up on the model, controlling a little bit of the volume on the skin. And let's also take care of those eyes, so I'll just drop a little bit of black into each socket. And then follow that up with just the tiniest slash of pale sand. I'll attempt a pupil in there. Kind of tricky on camera. I've got to lean into it. Not bad. And then a couple other things. All the leather wrappings will get another lift up, Gargoyle Gray. Paying close attention to the most upward facing angle. Really want to accent the upward facing curves. You can see the effect that has, nice and dramatic. All of the furs will get a little capping off of Barren Dune. Just the tiniest dots and slashes. The rags as well, just reapplying some of the edge highlighting, demonic yellow or pale sand where appropriate. Even an edge highlight can be a gradient, so make sure again, just like with the skin, that I'm escalating as I'm elevating. Hey. And all of the metallic areas are just going to get the lightest touch of Mithril, whether it's the bronze areas or the silver areas. Everything is going to get brought up to a final Mithril peak. Okay, and for the final touch, just going to give a quick medium dry, kind of an overbrushing to all the rubble. Just laying down some Gargoyle Gray. And the fun, kind of sloppy, abstract end. After all that tedious work, it's nice to water down some weathering powder. I've got some yellow earth from Secret Weapon Miniatures. Rest in peace. And we'll just drag that out across all of the rubble. Let it dry. It'll return back to a very light, powdery color. Just make sure I'm getting it into every crevice, and we'll have a look in the outro. Ah yes, none so dark, none so oathful. Welcome to the end of the video. You made it. I apologize, I know the audio on the intro and outro sounds strange. My mic is behaving badly, so it's on detention. Thanks for sticking through that. But there you have the Darkoath Savager. Such a fun group of models to work with if you like barbarians. Of course, every project I'm tempted to create an entire army around a character, but I feel that often. So I've had my little taste of Darkoath savagery, and I'll enjoy having them in my cabinet And who knows, maybe they'll get back onto the Warcry table someday. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. Always feel free to ask questions in the comment section down below. The more questions we ask, the more we learn. So, until we meet again, my friends, remain unchained.